It was March 27, 1977, a quiet Sunday on the Canary Islands. At Las Palmas Airport in Gran Canaria, chaos unfolded after a terrorist bombing forced authorities to shut it down. Incoming international flights had to be redirected to a smaller airport on Tenerife Los Rodeos. The airport was never designed for so many planes at once. Its single runway and limited taxiways were soon packed with large aircraft parked side by side. Among them were two giants, KLM Flight 4805, a Boeing 747 from the Netherlands, and Pan Am Flight 1736, another Boeing 747 from the United States. Both had hundreds of passengers, families, and tourists heading for holiday destinations. Nobody knew they had just entered history's deadliest aviation disaster. The weather began to turn. Thick fog rolled over the runway, reducing visibility to a few hundred feet. Controllers struggled to manage the sudden traffic surge. Pilots grew impatient, waiting for clearance to leave. Captain Jacob Van Zanten of KLM, one of the airline's most experienced and respected pilots, became increasingly anxious. Delays threatened his crew's duty limits, and he wanted to take off quickly. Meanwhile, Pan Am's crew, commanded by Captain Victor Grubbs, waited behind the KLM plane on the same foggy runway. Two massive jets, nose to tail, blinded by mist, relying only on radio calls. What none of them realized was how a single miscommunication would set the stage for catastrophe. As the afternoon dragged on, the fog grew denser, turning the runway into a ghostly corridor. Air traffic controllers could barely see outside the tower windows. Communication relied entirely on radios. Every word mattered. KLM was first in line for departure. The 747 taxied onto the main runway, preparing for takeoff. Behind them, Pan Am's 747 was told to follow and exit the runway via a designated taxiway. But confusion struck. The Pan Am crew struggled to locate the taxiway in the heavy fog. Instead of exiting, they continued down the runway, still moving forward as the massive KLM jet lined up to take off. In the cockpit of the KLM jet, Captain Van Zanten, eager to depart, advanced the throttles. His co-pilot radioed the tower. KLM 4805, we are now at takeoff. The phrase was dangerously ambiguous. The tower intended for them to wait for clearance, but Van Zanten misunderstood, believing he had been given permission. His engines roared to life, the jumbo jet accelerating into the mist. At the same time, Pan Am's crew radioed, "We are still taxiing down the runway." But in the overlapping chatter, parts of their transmission were missed. Neither crew could see the other through the fog. Two 747s, the largest passenger planes of their time, were now on the same strip of concrete, barreling toward each other. The fog muffled everything. From the control tower, no one could see the disaster unfolding. Time was running out and disaster was seconds away. Inside Pan Am's cockpit, Captain Grubbs suddenly spotted faint landing lights glowing through the fog ahead. His heart froze. It wasn't the taxiway. It was KLM's massive 747 racing toward them at full speed. "There he is!" he shouted. Grubbs yanked the throttles forward, trying to steer the Pan Am off the runway. His co-pilot yelled, "Get off! Get off!" as the massive jet struggled to move in time. But moving a fully loaded 747 wasn't instant. It lumbered forward slowly, heavy with passengers and fuel. Meanwhile, aboard KLM, Van Zanten saw the dark shadow of Pan Am looming too late. In a desperate attempt, he pulled back on the controls, trying to lift off early. The 747's nose rose into the air, but it wasn't enough. The undercarriage and engines struck the top of the Pan Am jet with a deafening explosion. Metal ripped through metal. Fire erupted instantly, turning the fog into a fiery orange glow. The KLM plane, unable to sustain lift, slammed back onto the runway, skidding in flames. Pan Am's fuselage was torn open like a can, passengers screaming as fire spread. The sound shook the entire airport. Controllers in the tower, blinded by fog, could only hear the horrifying crash and the frantic mayday calls flooding their radios. In less than 10 seconds, two giant aircraft carrying over 600 people had collided in the deadliest aviation disaster the world had ever seen. Inside Pan Am's jet, chaos erupted. Fire and smoke filled the cabin as passengers screamed and fought to escape. Flight attendants rushed to open emergency exits, shouting for people to jump. Many leapt from the burning wreck onto the runway, breaking bones but surviving. Against all odds, 61 people managed to escape before the flames consumed the aircraft. But for most, there was no way out. The impact had destroyed key exits, and thick smoke suffocated passengers within minutes. On the KLM aircraft, tragedy was even worse. The violent explosion killed everyone on board instantly. 248 passengers and crew. The respected Captain Van Zanten, who moments earlier was in command, perished with his entire flight. Rescue crews rushed through the fog, their sirens echoing across the burning runway. The scene was apocalyptic. 2 747s in flames, bodies scattered, survivors stumbling in shock. The fire was so intense that it took hours to extinguish. Survivors later described the horror, the crushing noise of the impact, the blinding fire, the unbearable heat, and the desperation to live. For those who made it out, the memory of that day would haunt them forever. By the end of the night, the scale of the tragedy became clear. Out of 644 people aboard both planes, 583 had died, making it the deadliest accident in aviation history. Families around the world mourned, and 2 great airlines, KLM and Pan Am, were left scarred forever. Investigators soon pieced together what went wrong: a chain of human errors, poor communication, stress, and the deadly fog. Most critical of all was miscommunication. The KLM captain thought he had clearance. The tower thought he was waiting. The Pan Am crew tried to warn, but their transmission overlapped and went unheard. One small misunderstanding turned into hundreds of lost lives. The world learned from Tenerife. Aviation protocols were rewritten. Standardized radio phrases were introduced. Cleared for takeoff, and standby would never again be confused. English became the universal aviation language, and pilots were trained to challenge decisions, no matter who sat in the captain's seat. Though nothing could undo the loss, those lessons have saved countless lives since. Today, the Tenerife disaster stands not only as a tragedy, but also as a turning point, a grim reminder that in aviation, clarity is life. The fog lifted too late that day, but its lessons shine forever.